Okay. Hello to everyone, and I am very happy to have you in this webinar, and a special thanks for the speaker that participated to this webinar. This webinar have some topics that at the moment are very actually, especially for the tuna fish chain and swordfish. Italy is a great country that use a lot of this kind of fish. But first of all, we produce a lot of this kind of fish. So for us, it's very important to create the table where we can discuss about these two species, tuna and swordfish, and bring together the different actors of the fish supply chain. The tuna chain is very old, but in the last few years change a lot of aspects. So we need to reorganize this kind of chain, and probably we need to stay together to create a feed chain from the sea directly for the consumer. Because in Italy, we noticed that the consumer want to eat this kind of fish, and so we try to organize a different way to commercialize this product. And after the sea and before the consumer, we have the commercialization and especially processing plant that can elaborate different dishes, different preparation, and create a new product for the consumer. We are very interesting about that, because this idea was supported from some statistic about the tuna system, and the consumer want to eat this kind of fish. About the swordfish is the same. These two species for the consumer are the best because it's easy to buy, easy to store at home, is easy to prepare at home. This is the biggest value of this kind of product. So we need to discuss together to prepare this kind of preparation for the fish chain. But we have, like this year in Italy, we have some problem about the possibility of fishing, the quota, and for our side, we represent the commercialization and the industry. We have a lot of problem about the documentation of this kind of product. Our company are very angry about this protocol that is very difficult to understand, and some company have a problem to do that. This webinar want to create a condition to analyze the problem and probably find the solution to that problem. So I leave the floor to Luigi Papalardo that moderate this webinar, but I have the pleasure to stay here and to participate to the discussion. Thank you to all the speakers and all to attendees. And after the intervention of speaker, it's possible to do some question to the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning. It depends from where you are. of course. And first of all, I see Maltese DG, Bjorn Carlos. Good afternoon, DG. Thank you for joining us. And I'm very happy to see you here. Welcome everybody to this session of the Digital Seafood Trade Show 2021. Hope everything is going well for all of you and your family, according to the current situation that everybody knows due COVID-19 sanitary emergency. Here in Italy, but I think all around the world, the situation is going to improve day by day. But the virus is still present, and we have to strictly follow the procedures and the safety protocols in order to do the best, especially in the fishery chains where several people are involved in fishing activities, and sometimes it's not so easy to manage all the steps in the fishery chain. This meeting will be focused on this specific topic. In particular, the title of the webinar is Large Pelagics and the Limitation of COVID, the bluefin tuna and swordfish supply chains. Last year, we had several issues to solve in particular during the bluefin and swordfish fishing campaign. But I think we did a good job supporting the administration, and we will see during my presentation the role of Oceanis within the framework of in particular of the CPC Observer program, and why it's so important to move together to standardize protocols and procedures, and in order to achieve common purpose, common goals, and not only in the sustainability of the resource, which is important, of course, but today I'm very glad to have several experts with us for sharing expertise and experience in data collection, if we speak under a scientific point of view, but we have also operators, because it's so important to build a very strong network between us to move together, and it's so important. Before we start, please allow me to thank again Assoitica for giving us this opportunity, and in particular Dr. Giuseppe Palma, for giving us this opportunity to attend this very interesting meeting. In my opinion, it will be very useful for us for create new cooperation and connection, not only between stakeholders, but as you will see during this meeting, we have involved several experts trying to connect science, marketing, and all the actors which yearly work around the fishery chains, in particular on large pelagic species, when we speak of bluefin tuna and swordfish, of course. If you need some clarification about or issue on the platform, please don't hesitate to contact us on Soitica by email on the chat box. I would like to introduce myself, just a few words. I'm Luigi Pappalardo. I'm the scientific coordinator of Oceanis. During my presentation, I will introduce you Oceanis and the role of Oceanis within the framework of the National Observer Program and data collection, and why in the last 10 years we are trying to improve the duties and the responsibilities of the National Observer, because they are going to play a primary role in the campaign as support of the operators, of the maritime authorities, and of course of the scientists. It's so important because improve knowledge and standardized protocols allow us to improve our skills and try to achieve the best goals possible during our programs, of course. I don't know if, Giuseppe, do you think I have to speak about the agenda? Maybe just a few words about it, if you think it could be useful for the participants?
The agenda is important, but I want to explain to the participant the agenda is okay, but first of all, I want to reuse your word in connection with our experience. We use some kind of fish that we don't produce in Italy. The most important product is bacalao. We don't fish this kind of product. We don't catch this product in the Mediterranean. But in Italy, we elaborate this kind of product in different way, and in special region, this kind of fish become a very important preparation. What I mean with this word, that we have the opportunity with our system of commercialization and processing to create a new system to commercialize these two fish. And we need your support that are in the first step of the fish supply chain. And with our cooperation and the competent authority, we can re-elaborate the system to commercialize this product. About the agenda, I have the pleasure to have with us General Director of DG of Malta, Department of Fishery and Aquaculture, and I thanks for the participation. And about the participation of John Walter of Southern Fisheries Science Center. This is a different speaker that speak about a different part of the world that work in the same fish chain. So our goals is to put together the different experiences and different experiences from you, Luigi Pappalardo, and Ornella Coco, the same. We think that the different experiences in different parts of the world can create a condition for an increase of the commercialization of this kind of product. That for us is important with a new strategy of commercialization of this product to add value on this product and to guarantee to the consumer the food hygiene of the product and a good quality. So I leave the floor again to Luigi Pappalardo, and we have a special condition in Italy. We have the canned food, canned tuna, the biggest product of consumer in Italy. I hope that in a few years, in the next year, we can transform the consumption of tuna from canned food to fresh, frozen, ready to eat, ready to cook product. I hope that, and I give my support for that topics. Thank you. Hai il microfono staccato, Luigi.
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with you, and in my opinion, that is why I tried to put together several experts on different topics in order to better understand how we have to move together, and that is the way. I know I just already said, but I'm very glad to have with us Dr. John Walter. It's an honor for me to have him because last year we did a very important cooperation from my point of view. And that is why I would like then during my presentation explain, and the presentation of Ornella, of course, to explain why it's so important to improve the knowledge. Also in some programs that are not considered very important. For example, the National Observer Program sometimes is not considered so skilled and so on, but we try to improve this figure because it's so important to be the connection between science and operators. And that is why last year in Sardinia we had the possibility to support John in sampling, because I had the possibility to involve Ornella like national observers, and she is expert, and she's has a very important skills in sampling and so on, and was easy for me to move very fast and support John in this sampling activity. It's the same if I refer to DDG, Mr. Bjorn Carlos. During this meeting, we will see how the National Observer Program has been improved in Malta, and how it's important to standardize protocols, program to create a very strong network that work together. From my side at the moment, for me, that's all. If John, if you are ready, I think we should start with your presentation, if it's okay for you, of course, and we can move on. What do you think?
I'm fine starting. I'll just share my screen and run from that then.
Great. Yeah, here we go. Okay, I'll leave you the floor, John. Thank you and good work.
Is everyone seeing my presentation?
Yes, of course.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Luigi, for the very nice introduction, and I thank Oceanis Italia for providing the opportunity for me to speak here. I am John Walter. I'm employed by NOAA Fisheries in Miami, Florida, in the United States, and that's part of the Southeast Fisheries Science Center, and that's my normal job. I'm also the Western Atlantic Bluefin Tuna Rapporteur for the ICAT Standing Committee on Research and Statistics. And so with that, we do the stock assessments for both Western Atlantic and Eastern Atlantic and Mediterranean bluefin through ICAT in a collaborative process. And I'll be talking on Atlantic bluefin tuna stock status management and new scientific opportunities. And I greatly appreciate this opportunity to speak here, because I think that as we move forward with this very valuable resource, the collaborations between industry, science, and management are quite critical. And I'll touch on where that's going to come to a particularly important collaborations later on in my talk, both on a scientific end as well as on a management end, as we embark upon management strategy evaluations. So with that,
John.
Yes.
Sorry. May I, if it is possible, to share the presentation in presentation mode? They asking me if it is possible.
Yeah. So it is in
like presenter, I think.
Yeah. So let me stop sharing. I think what happened is. Okay, is that
Great.
working?
Thank you.
Okay, so one of the key things to understand about this species, and particularly in the Mediterranean, is it's had a very long history of exploitation. In fact, there's been engravings in caves in Sicily of bluefin tuna, and the Romans had quite valuable production facilities in Cadiz many a thousand years ago. And this is a picture of one of the garum production facilities where they actually rotted the fish in large facilities and produced a very valuable fish sauce called garum, and then transported it back to Rome. So the species has had a quite long history, both for humans and in the Mediterranean. One thing that we have to think about in taking a long-term view of this species is that there's been substantial fluctuations in its population abundance over what we can reconstruct over a 300-year time period. Here are based on trap catches that have been recorded by many of the historical traps that go back to 1650 in the Mediterranean. And by reconstructing those catch time series, we can see what is a substantial fluctuation in the likely abundance of the population. What this tells us as scientists is that this resource does undergo ups and downs, and that poses a challenge to assessing the stock. It poses a challenge to markets as well. And one of the key things that we're trying to do is build some market stability to the extent that it could be, that the species can support it. And understanding these ups and downs so that we can provide advice and so markets can plan on the basis of that is what we'd like to be able to do in part through the management strategy evaluation, to be able to provide management procedures that are robust to what may be changing in the future relative to environmental change. So one of the key aspects, and when I got involved in bluefin, I quickly realized, as Giuseppe noted, that it is a global, really a globally connected market, and it's a pan-Atlantic species. But to understand the scale of it, you've got to look at where the removals are coming from. And in the left is a picture that shows the catches by the major gears, purse seine being yellow in the Mediterranean, trap being green at the Straits of Gibraltar, long lines blue in the Central Atlantic, and a small element in the western side, which is other, which are hand lines and harpoons. So the fishery in the United States and Canada is focused primarily on hand lines and harpoons by relatively small vessels. The fishery in the Mediterranean is mainly dominated by purse seines today, and then traps at the Straits of Gibraltar. The scale again shows that the majority of the landings come from the Mediterranean, and this is shown in the figure on the right, where the bulk of the landings are coming from the Mediterranean. The global value, which I probably don't even need to reiterate, is at least $1 billion in value, and this is in 2016. And one of the things that's quite fascinating is that the Atlantic and Mediterranean is really the world's bluefin factory. Greater than 50% of the total production of bluefin comes out of the Atlantic and Mediterranean. The other two producers are our southern bluefin tuna, which is at low latitudes in the southern hemisphere, and then Pacific bluefin tuna, which is in the Pacific. So the other thing that's key to understand about this species is that there's a substantial amount of mixing, and the fish that come and are produced and born in the Mediterranean quite often migrate over to the Western Atlantic. And this is a genetic study recently published that estimated that greater than 50% of the fish caught in the West may have been born in the Eastern Atlantic or Mediterranean. And these are the orange stocks, orange and Mediterranean. Purple is Gulf of Mexico stock. The other major spawning areas here in the Gulf of Mexico. And so what happens in the eastern side of the Atlantic affects the West, because these fish quite often move over here and form a substantial component of the fishery. So I'll touch on the stock assessments that we do at ICAT through a collaborative process with the Standing Committee on Research and Statistics. So usually we meet in Madrid. This year we've been meeting remotely, so we haven't actually been to the Secretariat. We use the catch rates or indices of abundance and scientific surveys, and there's a larval survey in the Mediterranean and a larval survey in the Gulf of Mexico, as well as an aerial survey 2 aerial surveys in the Mediterranean to estimate the stock status for the western and eastern areas. These are not stock status of the western eastern population because we know that there's substantial mixing. And so one of the things we've been asked to do by the Commission is to explicitly account for that mixing in our stock assessments. And we're beginning to do that in the management strategy evaluation. And then the ICAT Commission, which is the deciding body, meets to agree upon the total allowable catches and management measures. And that commission meeting usually happens in November. Again, it's been remote this year, and due to the challenges related to being able to meet in person. So here I'll go into the trends for Eastern and Mediterranean bluefin tuna, and I think that the trends in landings tell a very interesting story. Here is the trend by different gear category. In red here are the total allowable catches. And what we see is during the late 1990s through the mid 2000s, there was substantially high catches, well above the scientific tax. Catches exceeded 50,000 metric tons. And it was in about 2008 to 2010 when a number of events happened. First, some of the key events in the fishery. Originally, the fishery was purse seining smaller fish, and largely for canning. That shifted with size limits, the development of the sashimi markets, and the fishery switching to larger fish and purse seining larger fish, which was generally a positive event because that increased the yield per recruit. So from a fishery and a biological standpoint, for the same fish to be able to get more yield out of it, i.e. more meat out of it, we are killing the same number of fish. So that was a very positive switch to be able to get more yield out of the fishery. Then the development of the fattening farms in the 2000s further increased the possibility to get more yield out of the fishery because they could be captured in the wild and fattened in the farms, which was again another positive market change. But then in 2010, there was a CITES listing proposal. Now, CITES, from a market standpoint, is not a good thing because if it gets listed, then it prohibits international trade. And because many of the markets for bluefin tuna really rely on international trade, it was going to be a bad thing for the fishery and a bad thing overall. In response, there were substantial reductions in the size and in the total catches here. There was much stricter monitoring, control, and surveillance, much more enhanced and robust observer programs, as Luigi noted, as well as electronic catch documentations, and as you can see, much stricter adherence to the total allowable catches. It appears that in response, the population is rebuilding. It's now at a fairly high level, and the tax, or the total allowable catch, of 36,000 metric tons is at its highest level ever. So that is a success story for management and a success story for the population. You can see this in fishing mortality rates. On the right-hand side, this is the fishing mortality rate for young fish, ages 2 to 5, which was quite high through the 80s and 90s. Shifted, and here's the fishing mortality for age 10 plus, you can see a substantial shift to targeting larger fish on usually the spawning spurred a lot of the concerns that happened during around 2010. And the goal of fisheries management is to ability for the population as well as for the market. Best time record for 2021 and 2020. For the wet catch of 1,350 tons, working for both of the stocks. So one of the most challenging things is anyone who's watched a football match or a football team for a while, it's fairly easy for them to do well once. The challenge is maintaining that success over the long term. And this is one of the things that we're trying to implement, which are management procedures or harvest strategies. And these are procedures that are basically like a thermostat that allows us to increase the catch or decrease the catch according to an indicator. The benefits are that it's designed to achieve a trade-off of competing objectives of stability, keeping the fishery stable, yield, optimize the yield, safety, avoiding a collapse, and then status, keeping the stock healthy. It requires a collaboration between scientists, managers, and stakeholders to define the objectives, to construct the management procedures, and agree upon the process to build trust and confidence. And I've cited a few locations where people can get more information on these. And I'll note that this is an ongoing process at ICAT. The intention is to provide a management procedure to the Commission in 2022 for 2023 TAC advice. And this will be a change from our usual conduct assessment, provide the TAC. So the management procedure, in short, basically how it operates is that there's a pre-agreed framework for how the catch limits are going to be set and how all of the pieces are going to be put together to develop that. An example here is that if one has an index, and right now we're working on index-based management procedures, when the index goes up, the catch goes up, and when the index goes down, the catch goes down. The reason why these index-based approaches are valuable is that usually the indices reflect what's going on in the water. They're more responsive to what's going on, and they make sense to people. When catch rates are very high, there's likely a high abundance, and the catch should naturally go up. When it gets harder to catch the fish, there's probably fewer of them, and the catch should go down. So it makes a lot of sense, and once we simulation test it to determine that it's robust to a number of uncertainties, then ideally we can achieve the buy-in from stakeholders and managers that this is an effective way to manage the stock. The next thing that I'd like to touch on is the development of new science. And one of the most exciting things that I've seen in many years is the development of close-kin marker capture. And the theory behind this is that every fish has two parents. And if you tag the fish or capture the fish, you can genotype it, and it will then reflect the genotype of its two parents. This is basically a natural tag, much akin to tag or capture, without things like tag shedding or reporting rate. It utilizes next generation genomics, which is an industry for which the economics is operating entirely outside of fisheries. And so the economies of scale we have economies of scale and greatly reducing costs to do any kind of genomic work, largely because it's being driven by economies outside of fisheries. So the way we're applying it is we're using larvae, then letting them be the tags of each one of their parents, and what we're doing is trying to find matches between the parents and the offspring. We're recapturing the adult DNA from the fishery, and it allows us to estimate the absolute abundance in the population. It also, if it's implemented, could provide species identification and traceability, which is useful for monitoring the fishery, and it can be used directly in management procedures or in the assessment models. And it's been successfully applied to southern bluefin tuna and to white sharks. And I'll note that one of the things that it did for southern bluefin tuna was that it was at a time when they had a substantial controversy in the fishery, and they were facing down very severe cuts. What happened with close-kin is they actually estimated the population size and found that it was much larger than what the stock assessment was saying. So what it did was it provided basically a pressure relief valve for the fishery, and they were able to scientifically say that yes, indeed, the stock was larger than the assessment. And I'll note that for our stock assessments, that's one of the big challenges for them, is estimating the absolute scale of the stock, or how many fish are really in the water. We can usually estimate stock status on a relative basis, but counting how many fish are in the water is really hard. So this provides a method to do that, and we think that this is really one of the paths forward. I'll note that there's a pilot project for western bluefin tuna. We should be coming to completion in late this year. And we'd like to embark upon this for Eastern and Mediterranean bluefin. And the ICAT Grande Bluefin Tuna Year program, which is the program that funds a lot of the science to support management and assessment, is currently evaluating close kin for Eastern bluefin tuna. So this is an excellent opportunity for partnerships with the industry. And as Luigi noted, being able to collect tissue samples from where fishing is operating provides us this opportunity to collect tissues in small vials, a small tiny amount of tissue, which then is the adult recapture. And this can be done as on the right, but as those fish are sampled, this is sampling a fish in the US fishery where the head is removed. And in terms of the sample size, we'd probably need about 15,000 adults, or about 2% of the catch for 3 years. And for larvae, we need about 15,000 larvae over 3 years. One of the benefits we have is that we have strong partnerships with a lot of our scientific institutions in the Mediterranean that do conduct routine larval sampling. And so it's quite easy for them to get large numbers of larvae. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge a large and broad number of partners that we have in this work, both in assessment, in tagging, and in genomics. With that, I'd be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. There are some questions on this presentation coming from the participants. Giuseppe.
Yes, I have a question that is not a real question, but a hope. You think that sustainable using of the livestock of this kind of fish can be managed for the next year and guarantee the sustainability and the increase of consumption of this kind of fish? Because we noticed, like I say in the first in my intervention, that the people want, the consumer want to eat much more fish, and they want to eat much more tuna and swordfish. What is, in your idea, the right way to combine the sustainability and the increase of the consumption of this kind of fish?
I think that from what you said, your development of new markets or new products is actually quite important, because from what I've heard, the Japan sashimi market may be saturated at a certain point. And that is, I think, from a global perspective, there is only a certain amount of sashimi that can be eaten in Japan, but many people can enjoy bluefin tuna and should be able to. And as the stocks, as we get them to sustainable levels, which we have now, and the largest tax on record, there's more product on the market, and probably developing markets where people can be happy to eat a sustainably caught fish is going to be useful for the industry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's okay.
Okay. I think that, I don't know if there are more questions. Giuseppe, just one thing, the participants can do questions or comments during the presentation or not?
Yes, they can write on the chat, like they say good afternoon or good morning.
Okay.
They can write in the chat, and after the intervention, we can leave the floor for this question.
Okay, thank you. And one important thing, John, hope that the next meeting will be in person. Of course, it will be great to meet also each other finally in person, because it's, I think, 1 year and a half that we are doing meeting online, and sometimes we spend a lot of time of our day at the laptop, of course. And maybe just one comment in my opinion, that maybe it could be useful, of course, improve scientific project, just like you said, now on the genetic and so on, but it is important also to guarantee maybe for the future that the small scale fleets maybe can have more quota, but it's not up for the scientists, but it's for the management, of course, because if you want to have on the market, local market, more tuna, of course, you have to guarantee that the fishermen, the local fishermen, are able to be able to catch tuna and join the market, of course. We move. Try to do the best effort, of course. Great. I think that we can move on. Giuseppe, what do you think with the next presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
and so at this moment, I leave the floor to you for your presentation.
There is Ornella, if I remember well.
Ornella,
and
perfect.
then yes, my presentation, of course. Ornella, if you are ready, I leave you the floor.
Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. Firstly, I present myself. I am Ornella Coco. I'm a molecular biologist, a national and regional observer. Currently, I work as scientific consultant at Oceanis, which is, as you all know, an Italian company which manages the National Observation Program. And my main activities focus on training for national observers, in particular on ICAT documentation, so BCD, ITD. We make sure that national observer know what kind of documents are very important for bluefin tuna fishery, what kind of information they contain, and so they know how to manage them and how to read them. On the other hand, yearly I focus myself on scientific activities too, in particular on biometric data collection, both on swordfish and bluefin tuna, and on sampling of biological tissues when we can. I'm always excited to do so. So I think that we can start. First of all, I would like to say that I'm honored to be here. I would like to thank Assoitical, Mr. Palma, Mr. Walter. I'm truly honored to meet you. And so I think that we can start with my presentation. I'm going to share my screen here. Great, I hope you can see it.
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So today we are going to discuss the importance of the role of national observers on the bluefin tuna market. It is actually an indirect role, we can say, because national observers are involved in several activities in bluefin tuna fishery. So they basically, among their duties as national observer, they have a key role in several main steps of the process. And on the other hand, they have scientific duties too, in particular, exactly in data collection. So we are going to see something about the bluefin tuna market and tuna-like species market. And then we are going to actually understand the role of national observers in this framework. So first of all, let's talk about the importance of tunas and tuna-like species in the market. So basically, these products are very important, and that is strictly related to their nutritional values, first of all. In fact, this seafood product contains lots of minerals, proteins, omega-3, and vitamin B12. So among other advantages, they are food products of great value for consumers. So they are truly important on an economic point of view and have an extensive international trade. So basically, tuna market can be divided in categories, we could say. As Mr. Palma was saying before, the main market for tuna nowadays is the canned one, and in particular, all those products that are ready to eat and shelf stable in particular. As you can see here, they occupy the 62% of the global market, and that's because firstly, consumers nowadays have a more active lifestyle. So they look for something that is ready to eat, that has a longer shelf life. And for the ones who actually tried this kind of product, canned and ready to eat product is easier to transport over larger distances. So that's why they're more distributed. Then we have another slice of the market that relies on fresh steaks and sashimi. These products have a higher value, so they are more expensive, and they basically are distributed in more affluent markets. So we have a fourth category in other uses that covers the 17% of the market, and it includes mostly smoked and dried tuna products and other products that are handcrafted locally and so destined for local consumption. So here we can see tuna and tuna-like species, which are important for global market. Here you can see that there are some species that are, more diffused and distributed, such as skipjack, that covers the 57% of species landings. Then we have yellowfin, big-eye tuna, albacore, and last but not least, bluefin tuna, which is a product of great value and indeed even more expensive than the other ones. So basically, as you can see, tuna market is of interest for many countries. So the import and export of this product involves the world globally. And the four main seafood markets are, without any doubt, the United States, Japan, the European Union, and China. So basically, United States plays its key role mostly as importer, and is one of the countries that show the highest demand for this kind of tuna products, for this kind of seafood products. Then we have China, that on the contrary is a country that mostly is involved in exportation of tuna products in general, of course. And then the European Union market that actually plays its role both as producer and exporter and as importer. In fact, as Dr. Palma was saying before, for example, Italy mostly imports tuna products, while, for example, Spain is an important producer and exporter. So in recent years, rapid urbanization in confluence with international food trends has actually altered the current food preferences and habits of consumers. For instance, the increasing popularity of sushi, for example, around the world has catalyzed the demand for tuna, especially in new markets, for example, Central Asia, Latin America, and Middle East. So besides global population increase and changes in consumption models around the world suggest a future even greater increase in demand for tuna products, both fresh, frozen, or canned. As we can see here, some statistical analysis have shown that in recent years, there has been an increase of demand for tuna products, and in particular, a statistical analysis run by the Food and Agriculture Organization has shown an estimate of growth rate equal to plus 3.3% per year. So as you can easily imagine, this increase of an already high demand for this kind of product is having an important impact on populations. So this high demand has in the last decade significantly depleted several populations. So at this point, to establish a sustainable management for fisheries becomes a very important point by now, but not for those countries that are particularly interested in trading, but at an international level, it is very important to join forces to make fisheries sustainable. In fact, it has been understood for many years that tuna fisheries and other fisheries for highly migratory species absolutely need international cooperation for their conservation management. And that's because these fish, with their migratory activities, cover very high distances. So several countries are interested in fishing and trading operations on these species. That's why we need to join forces and start studying and understanding the role of tunas, both on an economic and a scientific point of view. So what it is important to do is to understand the role of tunas in the global economy and on marine system. So to achieve this goal, several international organizations have been established and founded. And one of the most important, without any doubt, is the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. This commission has the main aim to study tunas and tuna-like species, among other species, of course, in order to ensure sustainable fishery, defined concretely as an activity that keeps or leaves enough fish in our seas in order to ensure that stocks have the possibility to reproduce, ideally indefinitely. So in doing so, these resources will keep being available for future generations. So we need to make sure that these species are conserved, not only for commercial interest, but for ecological importance, for the ecological importance of it too. So ICCAT, in order to achieve this goal and to regulate fishery, has established observers programs, in particular 2 observers programs, the Regional Observers Program and the CPC or National Observers Program. So basically, these programs are established to make sure that there are designated operators which main duty is to observe and monitor fishing activities. And in particular, make sure that fishery operators actually follow all regulations which are established by ICCAT in recommendations. And so in doing so, actually the activities on the fishery activities on bluefin tuna and other species can reach the sustainability. So for what concerns the National Observation Program, according to the ICAT recommendation 1904, for example, each CPC shall ensure coverage by observers issued with an official identification document on vessels and traps active in bluefin tuna fishery on at least the 20% of pelagic trawlers, 20% of long line vessels, 20% of bait boats, 100% of towing vessels, and 100% of harvesting operations from traps. So here you can see how the recommendation tries to manage the supervision, the monitoring fishing activities, designating observers in particular. So if we focus specifically on this point, on the fact that there's the need to cover 100% of towing vessels involved every year in the bluefin tuna fishing campaign, we can easily understand the role, the main role of national observers in the whole process. In fact, national observers in the bluefin tuna fishery chain play a key role in one of the main steps of the bluefin tuna fishery process, which is the transportation of transport cage from the catching areas to farms. So they are basically allowing that main step in the bluefin tuna process. And on the other hand, national observers have scientific duties too. So they have to collect biometric data on bluefin tuna and swordfish too, of course, and biological samples. All those information needs to be transmitted to the scientific department of ICAT, which is the SCRS. So they can be analyzed and studied. And the achievement is allowing the possibility to constantly review fishing activities and evaluate the status of bluefin tuna stocks every year. So at this point, you can understand how national observers have a key role, both in some way on an economic point of view and on a scientific point of view. In conclusion, now we can understand how national observers in the framework of the National Observation Program can give a significant contribution in the implementation of a sustainable fishery for bluefin tuna and other extremely valuable species. So encouraging to develop new ways of conserving marine resources for future generations and implement proper regulated exploitation of these valuable resources. So for me, it is all. I thank you all for the attention, and I think we can move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ornella, for your very interesting presentation. And have seen in the chat box that there is a question from Mr. Pintus Gianni. Giuseppe, is it correct?
Yes. Yes.
And I think we can address this question to John, if you want to answer to this question.
Sure, Gianni, thank you for the question. It's a very insightful one. I'll note that without a sustainable stock, the sustainability of the fishery is going to be in jeopardy. So we've seen when the stock is in a bad condition, then the fishery is going to suffer either through market forces or things like CITES, which are not good for a fishery or the market. However, the question you get that there's a trade-off between the stock status or what's really good for the stock and what might be really good for the fishery. And along that continuum, and you put a sum there, it's not a question I can answer. That's a question that the managers have to balance the competing objectives that we have as a society for how we manage our fish stocks. And so that's one of the questions we'll be posing to the Commission through the MSE process as we give them different management procedures that might have different degrees along that continuum of 50-50, 60-40 on economic sustainability versus fishery sustainability. So that, but elucidating that trade-off and allowing managers to handle and deal with the risk is really that's the role of scientists, and then in the role of managers is to make those difficult decisions.
Yes, Luigi, I can speak about this question, and for this question, I want to create connection with the DG Calus. Usually, we speak about sustainability only on the sea. I want to speak with you. I want to try to speak with you about sustainability after the sea. Why I call DG Calus for Malta experience. We lost a lot of fish by the waste. We lose a lot of fish with the waste. We don't use all the fish that we fishing. When we process the fish, we lost some part of meat, some part of other kind of the fish. This part in special fish like swordfish and in the tuna is a little portion, but maybe is 10-20% of this kind of product that we lost. If we organize a different way to use this kind of waste, that is there isn't a waste, is a fish product, to prepare other kind of preparation, probably will reduce the use of livestock, and we have a lot of fish to sell, to eat. Sustainability is very important, but first of all, I think we need to speak with the consumer. The consumer don't know the concept of sustainability. For the consumer, the only way to be sustainable is stop the fishing or stop the aquaculture. This is the concept that the consumer, the public opinion have. We need to speak with the consumer and public opinion about that, because we have there is a strange opinion about the sustainability. This is only a suggestion for you, for John, for DG Calus, and for Luigi and Ornella, that probably we need a special round table where we can discuss about that. Please, Luigi and John.
John first.
Yes, I think you're very correct in the public perception. When people ask me about bluefin tuna and tuna in general, they say, oh, should I eat tuna? And I tell them, yes, many of the stocks are sustainably managed. And you can look at the ISSF report that they give every year on the status of the stocks. And so in Ornella's diagram of the total catch of all of the stocks, most of them are in the green zone. So most of the tunas are sustainably harvested. And so but people are stuck on thinking that bluefin tuna is in a bad condition, but that was actually 20 years ago. And if you, when in my presentation, you look at, yes, there was a situation 20 years ago or 10 years ago with CITES, which was a bad situation for the markets and probably a bad situation for the stock. We've done a substantial amount, and that story, I think, hasn't gotten out to the market and to the public as much as it should. And so I agree with you there that, and I do recommend that people eat tuna when it can be sustainably harvested.
Perfect.
Yes, you have DG, Carlos. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, I cannot agree more than what was said by, not agree more with what was said by Mr. Palma, because yes, sustainability in people's minds and beliefs, especially consumers, starts and ends at sea. And no one realizes mainly that sustainability can also be done through consumer habits, mainly consumer habits, like for example in Malta we tried to do a campaign to diversify what people can buy, what consumers can buy. Diversification in what sense? We have the traditional stocks, swordfish, tuna, and bluefin tuna, dolphin fish, and in season, and some others. And there are a whole lot other more, which are not that popular. So what's the problem here? That fishermen tend to or sell with very, very cheap prices, or even unlawfully discard them. So where's the sustainability is nowhere here. So we try to educate the people and the consumers that, listen, with this kind of fish, you can cook this, and this. So it really went in this way of how can it be consumed in order to educate in that way. The results, well, you know, you need a quite a long strategy in order to get into people's minds and change their habitudes and then aptitudes as well in that regard. But at least we began a process of education. Also, and interesting enough, in my opinion at least, because if one fishes really sustainably and puts on the market fish in a sustainable manner, consumers will not like it. And they would say simply, well, prices are high and are remaining high. Because what happens? If there's a stock which sells, then the majority of fishermen go for that stock. They flood the market, and it's a simple economic thing. Demand versus supply, there is supply more than the demand, prices go down. If there's a staggered way of putting the product on the market from the fisherman's side, because we as administrations cannot by no means intervene in the market. So if it's from the fisherman's side, so what's put on the market, it's a ripple effect, because what's put on the market will bring a better price. Whilst bringing a better price, then we are consuming sustainably. Why? Because there's a staggered way of doing things, and we can also diversify. Because yes, in season is this, so let's stagger this. Now the season of the other fish stock begins, so let's stagger that. But it needs to come from the fishermen themselves. Mainly, the fishermen needs to organize themselves in that way. But of course, it's more of a personal opinion, this one. But yes, I know it happens, because in Malta it happens in agriculture as well. Well, when summer comes and every farmers, just to give an example, has melons and watermelons. So you can imagine the prices of such products at what prices sell. And it's kind of the same situation.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
DG.
much for.
Yes. I see that there are no more questions on this point or comments.
No, at the moment there isn't a question in the chat box.
Okay, I think we can move on. I'm going to share my screen for my presentation, and let's move on. All right. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Here we go in the presentation mode. My presentation will focus on the importance of the international cooperation, in particular taking into account the figure of the national observer. Just like I said, I would like to speak about the importance and the role of the national observers, and I included in this presentation some pictures coming from our recent cooperation, in particular with John and the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture in Malta, of course, for the GBYP Fast 10 biological sampling on bluefin harvest. As you know, and Ornella already said, bluefin and swordfish are two highly migratory species, and there is a convention area, including all the countries or CPC, which work actively on these two important stocks. In our case, in the European Union, we are a unique CPC, but inside this CPC are included several member states. Of course, Malta, Italy, Spain, and Portugal, Morocco are very important because they have an important fleet operating in the Med and targeting bluefin. And some countries, such as Italy, for example, also swordfish. In particular, if we give a look on the bluefin tuna, there is a specific recommendation from ICAT, and at the moment is 1904, waiting for the updated, and which established a multi-annual management plan for the bluefin tuna stock. And in order to monitor the fishing activities, the ICAT recommendation, inside the ICAT recommendation, two monitoring programs are developed. The first one is called, as you can see in my slide, a Regional Observer Program, and the second one, the National Observer Program. Of course, the two programs are developed in different ways on different fishing fleet. I will focus my presentation on the National Observer Program because our company, Oceanis, is actively involved within this kind of framework. And in Italy, and I have in the next slide, here we have Oceanis is an Italian private company. Our core business is focused on several macro areas. I will show you during this presentation. But what is very important for us is to try to support all the fishery operators involved in the fishery chain, of course, but in particular to support the fisheries departments of the administration at all the levels. Indeed, since 2011, Oceanis is in charge to develop a National Observer Program in Italy. Since 2018 in Malta, and this year, despite the current situation due to COVID-19, we were able to standardize our training activities, our observer program in Libya and in Albania. It is very important for us because our main goal, just like I said, is to try to standardize procedures and protocols to move all in the same way. Which are the micro areas of our interest, in particular, our core business move on the bluefin and swordfish fishing, of course. And we have 4 macro areas. First one on the scientific project. According to the ICAT recommendation, the observers shall collect some kind of data. For example, you have here in my slide biometric data or biological tissue when it is requested. For this, it's very important to guarantee a very detailed training activities in order to improve knowledge and improve skills of the national observers. Of course, there are several projects. For example, the ICAT has the GBYP, which is a specific program where some goals needs to be achieved. But for our interests at the national level, and I will show you in the next slide, we're monitoring some kind of fishing fleets, for example, longliners too, but we will see. Our macro area is the public relations. For us, it's very important to maintain and improve international cooperation. At the moment, at least for this year, I will be part of the SCRS working group at the ICAT level, but our cooperation is ongoing with the IOTC in the Indian Ocean. Italy has a purseiner operating in the Indian Ocean on another target species, which is yellowfin, or in RCG large pelagic meeting. There are several groups where it's very important to be part in order to better understand which are the requests and which are the goals that we want to achieve in order to move for the sustainability of a common resource, which is, for example, the bluefin. Our group is structured with several experts. For example, you have in top right corner of the slide, technical counseling, conventional video evaluation, or technical scientific working plan. It's important during the fishing season to be able to solve several issues which are part of the fishing season. That, for example, could be the possibility to have to solve problem about the video recorded during the transfer operation. But the core business and what is very important for us in order to be able to improve network and improve the cooperation through the figure of the national observers, of course, is the training. We focus our training activity on the safety at sea, on best practices on the wolf fishery chain, the knowledge of the ICAT recommendation, of course, and how to evaluate the video. Our national observers need to know how the fishing activities is going on and all the topics related to the fishing season and the fishing activities. For this, our protocols and our procedures have been adopted as well in Malta and Libya, in Italy. It's a beginning of this in order to build a very strong network. Here again, 4 major points about the activity that we yearly develop according to the framework of the National Observer Program and data collection. What is important to say that our training courses, in order to standardize knowledge, are focused on different professional figures. There is not only the national observers, but as you know, during the fishing season, other people are involved. For example, the masters of the towing vessel or the divers who works during the transfer operation. And our training courses are also focused on the figure of the fisheries inspectors, because all the people moving on the same topics need to have the same knowledge on the IGAT, on the sampling activity, and so on. Point 2, sampling and data collection. During 10 years, more or less, we have developed a very strong network with the national observers. They are able, of course, to collect samples and be able to answer to the request of the administration about the data collection and the monitoring of the fishing activities. What is it very important, and it's another point, another strong point for us, is the technical logistic support. At this regards, what I would like to say, it's important to have logistic facilities. And if we are able to build a very strong network, in this case, regarding the bluefin fisheries chain, it will be important to know which is the best solution to solve some kind of issue. And during this presentation, I'll show you some picture coming from the sampling activity that we had done in Sardinia, and that was possible thanks our logistic facilities, for example, and so on. But that's not enough if we think that in order to guarantee the safety on board of all the people during the fishing activities, it is important to develop documents and protocols in order to guarantee that. And last year, for example, we had some issue due to COVID-19 because, as you know, there were some problems to be able to deploy observer, for example, on board the long liners, and sometimes it's not possible in order to guarantee the safety and security on board. But we were able to do that. It means to do a more intensive training, standardize the protocols between parties, and guarantee that everybody respect the rules. And in this way, we realize that it is possible to do. Another point is to develop innovative technology. During this year, for example, we developed an informatic platform where all the observers are able to fill up the data collected during the year, during the sampling activity. At the moment, this informatic platform is on for Italy, Malta, and we hope also in Libya and Albania, but it's ongoing. And for me, it's very important because we standardize the kind of data we want to collect, and at the same time, we have a complete idea of the fishing activities, about the data, and also a statistical point of view, and could be a beginning, waiting to make this platform useful for all the countries that needs in some fisheries, of course. And the last point is the point that I like more, is to participate at the meeting. For example, at the ICAT level, at the SCRS level, and at the Commission level, because I had the opportunities to meet several experts, to learn a lot of new things, and to improve day by day all the management measure and how to achieve the common goals, of course. Just a few words about the National Observers Program. Our activities are developed on those 4 points, in particular on the long liners, on the tuna traps when it is possible, of course. In Italy, we have observers on it, at landing ports, and on towing vessels. The third point, on landing ports, it's another example why it's so important to build a very strong network, in our case with the National Observer, because we were able to, in Italy and Malta, to build a network of observers that they are perfectly linked to the maritime authorities and to the fishermen, and they support each other during, for example, the landing activities. and all of the actors are perfectly connected during the fishery chain, from the fishermen to the market. And we have the possibility to monitoring the activity, to collect data if it is requested, and to support the market in respect, of course, of the cold chain and so on. There are a lot of things that we have to take into account. Some picture from the fishing season. I take this picture from my experience on board. It is very interesting. We have a catching activity during a transfer operation. We have a purseiner and some picture during the caging activity. It is very interesting to know how is developed the fishery chain from the catching to the harvesting. And I think that everybody needs to know in detail how it works, just to better understand where the issue could be solved, if any. Here, some picture again from the National Observer Program. Here we have a landing activity from and our observers. Sometimes the activities could be not so very quiet, because here, for example, the observers during, if I remember well, last year, they were able to collect data at landing, weight and length of the fish. Here, supporting the operators, they were able to follow the fish during all the operation. And it is important if you want to have a complete idea again. Why it's so important, international cooperation? For me, it is important to standardize, just like I said, common protocols, to standardize information and a common database. It could be possible. I know it's difficult and it's hard to think, but something is moving on. Have logistic facilities, and our cooperation with NOAA, it's an example from my side, and assistance and support to the operators in the fishery chain is another important point. Sometimes also the maritime authorities needs to be supported, because they maybe needs help to how to fill documentation and so on. And we had this kind of problem. Just in order to conclude my presentation, another few picture coming from the recent cooperation with Dr. John Walter, NOAA. Here's some picture coming from Sardinia during the sacrificio activity and the sampling activity. Of course, we were able to collect 150 samples from muscles of bluefin tuna. We collected just 130. 20 samples were collected from landing activity in Sicily from another national observers. But I would like to highlight this cooperation because for me it was important to develop it in order to better explain how the role of the national observers is going to improve. And it is important to improve knowledge and expertise of our guys to be able to be part of scientific project, of course, and or more. It depends from the needs, of course. Here, other picture coming from the sampling activity, the support with the maritime authorities during the weighing of the fish. And here the fish were ready to be processed in the farm, in the facilities, tuna trap facilities. And the third point of the importance in this case of the international cooperation are some picture coming from the GPYP Phase 10 we realized last year as support of the department of Fisheries and Aquaculture Maltese. And I would like to thank you again, DG Bjorn, for giving us this opportunity. I like this picture because here we have an idea of how is important the cooperation. Here we have the operators, the control unit, the regional observers, and our team, which were structured with also national observers. Here we have Ornella during the sampling activity, in this case, measuring the length, and all the actors were involved and worked together to achieve the same purpose. In this case, to process the fish, of course. And we take the opportunity to collect samples. Here during another sampling activity, in this case, the length, and other picture about this very interesting experience. It's were very interesting on board the Japanese processing vessels, and another interesting experience, of course, here during the sampling activity, and some picture, but a few picture about the collection of otolites. I have some videos, but I think that I can show you in another situation maybe. And here some picture from otolites, these very small parties of bone in the head of the tuna that are able for the aging, that are used for the aging, and so on. Just, and I think finish just a few slides about how it is important to maintain the attention due the COVID-19, because just like I said before we start, the virus is still present, and we have to follow the common protocols and safety protocols, and pay attention to guarantee the safety, especially on board, but also for our family, of course. And this is a slide that I take from Ornella presentation, because last year we were actively involved in the developing procedures in order to avoid the spreading of the COVID-19. And I can say now with success, and we were very happy to close the fishing season, while another one is going to start in a few days, of course. Conclusion, but just a summary of what I said. Why it's so important to improve the national cooperation, because we can improve common protocols and find lack maybe in some protocols and try to solve it. Improve expertise and communication. Everybody needs to work on their expertise, of course, trying to help each other and create connection between all the actors involved in the fishery chain. I like it. The third point I like much more, because it's improve sharing information, and I think it could be very useful if we speak basically on the technical scientific project and logistic facility, but it could be useful for all of us in order to achieve what is very important, the sustainability of the resource, of course. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I'll be glad to answer it. Maybe I see that.
Perfect, Luigi. I think that your intervention and trace the activity on the sea about the tuna, especially the tuna, and I think that we can go to the conclusion with the last intervention, and then at the end, if there are some questions, we can speak together with the speaker.
Okay, I think that we have DG Bjorn last intervention, and if you agree, DG, we can move on with you. I leave you the floor. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Luigi. So practically with regards to the national observers, you covered quite a lot of ground. with your presentations, both from Ornella and also from you, Luigi. But it's interesting to see it from the administration side. As you have presented me, I am the Director General of the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture of Malta. And what I can say is that with an organized and well-prepared National Observers Program, improvements will be kind of disseminated across all the fields. In what way? So when I went into the department, I found a situation where the National Observers Program was locally done from the department itself, engaged people to go as national observers. Then when delved for information and then the details of the program, I found things that weren't right and weren't supposed to be done in that way if we are to go to the next level and effectively do things in a professional way. In fact, I remember particularly masters of tug vessels complained about certain observers because of situations which were created, etc., etc., and all the problems one could imagine in this regard. So, in my opinion, the efforts of the department per se, and considering that Malta is a very small member state, and considering that administration and the human resources are quite limited, I believe that the focus should be our control obligations itself, rather than dying to do everything and reach none. I'm speaking quite frankly here. So I decided no, the National Observers Program needs to be done in a more professional, in a much more professional way, serious way, because if we do things professionally, even the operators themselves will respect us and perceive us as more professional, and automatically the level goes up. So we began our collaboration with Oceanis here, and don't get me that I am doing an advertisement or a public relations exercise for the company here, but I want to explain from our side exactly how things, when we gave it to professionals, progress. So what did Oceanis do in this regard? First of all, organized training courses. Of course, it was with our collaboration and the department support. So Oceanis identified who were the national observers, opened up more to as needed and as available to more participants. So we organized a training program. From that training program, we could examine and evaluate who is fit for purpose and who is not. And trust me, even in that result, one could understand what was wrong with the program, how it was done in previous years. Because the results, the examination results, proved that. So that's from one part. So we trained the national observers, even those who used to go year after year after year. Yes, everyone was subject to this training. So that's point number one. Point number two, sessions for operators themselves and also masters of vessels. For example, it's concentrated on the tug vessels, so as not to lengthen this presentation and this intervention long. On tug vessels were present there, and the training and sessions were done in order for the operators themselves to understand the role of the observer and how things can be done more professionally. Same goes for tug. vessel masters. They are those who bring the tuna to the Maltese registered farms, to our farms. So they need to understand the importance of their job and the responsibilities of their job. And also, apart from the fisheries side, there is also the maritime side of things, conditions on board, conditions at sea, emergencies, what one can do, etc., etc. Moving forward to national observers, we gave the national observers a full equipment kit, which made them more take the job seriously and not just we go there, okay, we have 2 months in this year. No, it's not like that. There are obligations and there are, of course, conditions to be met. So by doing these initiatives, which to some may seem basic and obvious, for us, by doing the right work, we saw a total shift, whole shift from average or below average level to a very professional level. And what did this professional level provide us with? Well, first of all, it has provided us with respect from the operators themselves. Mainly, operators realized, well, the administration means business. So if it is doing the National Observers Program, well, let alone the real checks on the farm for those who are conversant with the ICAT recommendations are. So, because there's a whole lot of checks over there which needs to be done from an administration side. So that was the first message. The second message, no, not all tug vessels, for example, are suitable for that job. No, not all tug vessels can have onboard national observers. Levels needs to be done. In fact, we conducted inspections and visits to the tug vessels which are normally employed as tug vessels during the season, BFT season, and remarked what shall be improved. But voluntary, not forcing our hand as administration. Voluntary, listen, it's better if you prove this, and that. What I can tell you is that over 90% of vessels did the work voluntary, which was a great success for us, because it meant that, yes, our message is being delivered here, that we are doing, that we want to try to do things professionally from administration side, of course, and that the operators and tug vessels, etc., are receiving that message. And it's important because what I can say is that when you are on the same level and when, like we are now, understanding better each other, that they know what is expected from them with regards to our side and vice versa, we are progressing well in this important industry. But I concentrated my intervention mainly on national observers, contact vessels, and cagings, etc. But there are also the landings, like Luigi explained in the previous presentation. What I can say is that now we have a very good collaboration. Of course, there is always room for improvement, but there's good collaboration for landings. And even fishermen now are associating the data collection program with a better level of professionalism, and fishermen contribute to such progress because they want to know more, they feel the need to know more. So what I'm saying here, that again, with an increased level of professionalism and organization, engagement with the sector comes easier. And collaboration from the sector comes easier. As one may think that fishermen, for example, in Malta, we have a literacy problem amongst fishermen. So one may reason out, well, everything passes and they accept everything. No, absolutely. When they see a level of professionalism, an increased level of professionalism, they collaborate because they have the confidence in what the administration is doing. So to sum up and not go for hours explaining this kind of thing. Mainly to sum up is this, that by, as an administration, increasing a level of professionalism, and which we increased a lot, it wasn't, one may think the operators or the fishermen may take it bad. No, in our case, the experience taught us that it was a very good thing. It was a very good thing in the sense that they recognized the efforts which are being done, they recognized the goalposts, they recognized the our mission, where are we heading, they recognize what we want to get from all this thing, and they collaborate, which is a very positive thing. Thank you. I am happy to answer any questions as needed.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, and I'm very glad to hear that, because I think that we are doing a great job, and indeed, in the last 3 years, we improve a lot. There is more to improve, but step by step, of course, for everybody. Yeah, in Italy, in Malta, and so on, of course. And I can't see any questions or comments, if I'm right, Giuseppe. I can see.
I think there isn't answer, because we answer to some question during the webinars, and I leave the floor to you for the conclusion.
Okay, because I've seen here some no question. Okay, great. You think that we are at the end of this webinar, and again, I would like to thank again all of the participants, and in particular Dr. John Walter, for joining us during this meeting. Thank you, and the same for DG Bjorn Kallus. Thank you, Ornella Coco, and thank you, Giuseppe, for giving us this opportunity to share and improve our connection. If you agree, I would like to give the floor to John, and also to conclude the session, and then to the DG, Ornella, and you for the closing session, of course.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Oceanis Italia, for the opportunity to talk here. I hope it's been productive, and I hear a lot about the small-scale or artisanal fisheries, and I note with some interest that most of the Western fisheries for bluefin fall into that, where they're a single owner operator of a vessel or a harpoon vessel, and so they may have a limit of 1 bluefin a day, and so they're quite small scale operations, usually 1 person and maybe their father. So that is a lot of the Western fisheries are quite small scale and have that same concerns about making sure that that kind of a fishery continues. So I would say that there's some similarities there between the Western fisheries. And thank you for the opportunity, and I hope that people, if they are interested in paying more closer attention to what ICAT is doing regarding the MSC, I hope that they can follow along and talk to their commissioners and their scientists who attend the meetings to convey concerns, comments, thoughts on how we develop the management procedures and continue to push the science forward. Thanks.
Thank you, John, so much. And Ornella, would like to say something?
Yes, I would like to thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Palma and Asoitica, for having us, and thank you, DG Carlos, for your kind words. We are doing a good job, and I hope that we are going to continue in doing so. And thank you, Dr. Walter, for joining us. And thanks, Dr. Papalardo, for moderating this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ornella. And DG, if you want to add something, and then Giuseppe for conclusion.
Just as my predecessors in this closing remarks, I thank you all for this opportunity. It was my pleasure learning, as always, as every day, in this sector, and it was my pleasure to be here and also share our experience with regards to the Regional Observers Program. Thank you, Luigi, for your moderating, and everyone for the invite. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, DG. Giuseppe, I give you the floor.
Yes, I am very happy about this webinar. We have reached our goals. We put together the public administration, the international organization, the observer, the industry, and the people that work along the fish supply chain, especially for bluefin tuna and the swordfish. I hope that this opportunity we can able to translate in organization a round table where we discuss the opportunity of this kind of fish chain. And I am very, very happy about this webinar and the discussion involved in this webinar. So I thanks to all of you, the speaker and the attendees that are with us, and see you at next time. And if you have the opportunity, visit our fair that is the first fair in the world, and I think this is the most beautiful fair for fish sector. Thank you all, to all of you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye. See
Bye.
you.
Bye, John.
Bye.
Bye, John. Bye, Carlos.
Bye, Giuseppe.
Ciao,
Thank you.
Ornella.
Bye.
E ciao,
Bye,
Luigi.
bye.
Stay safe.
Bye, Luigi. Yeah.
Bye, John.
See you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Ma se ti dico che è iniziato a scrivere un telefono di Ornella in questo preciso istante, a Giuseppe uscì. Vediamo.